Welcome to Haunt Weekly.
Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Crystal.
And this is Haunt Weekly, a weekly podcast about the haunted attraction and haunted entertainment industry, covering everything from your home haunt to your mega haunt for haunt actors, haunt owners, and haunt aficionados.
Yes, and this week we have a special guest with us.
Yes, we do. We are recording live from the Lair of Despair, as we've taken to calling it.
That's what I'm going to call it.
That must have been agreed while I was out of the
room.
room.
No, it was not. It wasn't agreed. I didn't agree on this. And I'm actually really okay with it, though, regardless. Yeah. But yeah, no, my name is Kyle. So I've been working at Haunts for 7 years now, and I've started off, I'm actually from Minneapolis originally, I'm living down in New Orleans right now. I started off with kind of a unique background because I started off in the basement of an art gallery that we built Haunted House out of that. And then from there, I moved to New Orleans, started working with Jonathan and Crystal on their haunts, worked at a few other haunts here around town as well. Then last year I was in Salt Lake City, and so I've been kind of bouncing all around. I've worked at some haunts in Salt Lake City, been to some around there, so I've just kind of been around.
Yeah, you've got a vast experience from our little home haunt in our garage to big major haunts.
Professional ones. So it's everything in between.
It's nice perspective.
Yeah, and we're bringing in Kyle on this topic because we admit we are not experts on everything. And today's topic is one I think we're all well versed in.
Yes.
It is something that definitely differs from haunt to haunt, and Kyle, with his much greater breadth of haunting than we have, he is, like I said,
it's more like my lack of focus. I like to think of.
You are the living embodiment of Johnny Cash's "I've Been Everywhere" man.
Well, I try and get around, and it's not always sensical. It usually doesn't make any sense at all, but then I just kind of end up in different places. So.
And I would not have thought of Salt Lake City as being a haunt scene.
Well, what was weird about that is, and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun or...
That's all right.
But yeah, what's interesting about Salt Lake City is there's literally, and no offense to Salt Lake Cityans, but there's nothing else to do in Salt Lake City. There really isn't. And so if you are in Salt Lake City during the month of October, you're going to go to a haunted house. So I was shocked. I was telling y'all about this, where I was in... It was the first weekend of October, and I'm working the first weekend of October. I'm working at this place, and they're like, it's going to be really busy. I was going all crazy,
having witnessed Kyle's technique in my haunt, I know what he means by this, and dude, you cannot sustain it.
Yeah, I'm high energy, and I was 6 hours. I'm I've done this before. I know my limits. I'm good, and they're like, this is going to be really crazy. I don't know if you should do 6 hours of this high energy. And I'm I'm fine. Don't worry.
Got it.
And it was one of the busiest haunts I've ever seen. It would be, down here in New Orleans, some of the haunts that I've worked at, or in Minneapolis too, a Halloween night level. Right. And it was the first weekend of October on a Saturday. Yeah. And so they were right. I was really kind of burned out at the end. I mean, I still was able to push through and do it. But afterwards I was wow, this is just really crazy.
Did you do it the same thing next week?
Yeah, I know. And then the next night, so I was oh man. And so I had to kind of pare it down a little bit, but it was interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, so glad to have Kyle here. Glad to have him help provide us some new perspectives on this topic. And to this week's topic, the core of the haunt industry, I would say, distract and startle, the idea of divert and then scare the ever-loving crap out of someone.
Right, and this ties directly into last week's topic, which is what to do with actors whenever you get them.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's really, I mean, it's good that y'all are doing this topic, because that is, like you say, a foundational scare tactic.
Right.
Of not only, but the important part too is a lot of people really like to focus on the scare.
Yeah.
But the distract is also super important.
And the distract is about getting people to let their guard down.
Exactly.
It's getting people to, because when people go through a haunt, I mean, I don't do this because we're all haunters in this room.
Yeah.
So we go through a haunt, we're it's home. We're kicking in the front door to our house when we go visit a haunt. Yeah. But other people, it's they're all tense and they're all looking everywhere and they're trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And the distraction is getting them to focus on something, let that 360 guard down, the bubble comes down, and then you can break the sphere.
Right, and this is where you can really use those actors who tell part of the story, who aren't in scare roles, which are hard to find because a lot of actors just want to be scary.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Because what I was going to say too is, and that's why I think the distract is so important.
Yes.
Like the best actors are not the ones who just scare all the time. They're the ones who can play a supporting role as well.
Right.
Because that sets everything up, and sometimes your role is, it's a little bit less glamorous, it's a little bit less sexy. You just are the guy that they look at while someone else gets them.
Yeah.
I was doing this in Salt Lake City actually last year. I was working in this room and they had this huge kind of setup of like all these crazy machines. It was like a torture chamber thing. And I had a barrel, and they didn't tell me I could do this, but I did. But I did it. But
Kyle, if I've learned anything about you are the type to ask forgiveness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We didn't tell you could climb into our rafters, but you did.
He mentioned the possibility the rafters might be involved. He did not say he would climb into them.
Yeah, so
just saying.
But so they had this giant oil drum, and I found out that if I made one swift motion, I could grab it and then throw it down on the ground really loud. And it was horrible for my back, I'm sure.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Dude,
and
you're going to be like 40 at the end of it.
I'm going to look like I'm 70 when I'm 40, yeah.
Quasimodo.
Yeah.
You will actually be in this track.
But yeah, so like I would grab it, throw it up, and then like throw it down, and it made a ton of noise. And it was like, people weren't usually, like, it was very threatening, but it wasn't like a startle. It wasn't like that.
No.
It was very much a distract, because then there was someone around the corner that while they're like, whoa, this dude is like killing his back.
Yeah.
Like, they'd be like,
doctor?
yeah, like that guy is really not doing so well with his back. Then that person would jump him out. And that was like, it was still fun, but like it's so important. I mean, just what you're saying there. I was just trying to underline the importance of that.
And we talked last week a little bit about this, but it's also, the distract is often a very theatrical actor. This has to be a person who can talk to people and get up there and song and dance their way and entertain a crowd and hold their focus when they're not wanting to focus on something.
Right, and a lot of times this can also be your victim characters.
Yes.
Your victim roles play
that's
very
true.
good distracts.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like what all of you are saying, like, a lot of times it's very hard to be verbal. Like I've found personally, it's very difficult to be like very talky and be good. Like it's to be that and to be good is very, because you need to know how to interact. There's a lot of like uncertainty, and you need to be able to like react in that way.
It's an improv.
And so like you're saying, like if you're able to kind of do that and just be front and center while you have someone kind of creeping up from the side and like jumping out of them.
Right, and you have to be able to engage them and read their response, because if you do something and they don't react at all, you have to change your dialogue on the spot so that you can get those people into you.
Yeah, that's one thing that I always say, like one tactic that I try and use a lot is you basically run the gamut of people and styles of scaring. So like they walk in the room, you got in for however long that room is, and you poke and prod each person in one. Sometimes physically, that's a whole other thing. But like, that's a different week. Yes. But like, you poke and prod them like in a scare sense. And then you try all these different things. You see which one is the most scared. And then you try a bunch of different things. And then you go after that person. And so it's kind of like this breadth of things that you kind of try a lot of times.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how to set up a distracted startle.
Yeah.
So one way is to have the startle part around a corner.
Yeah.
So that whenever you go in, you're looking directly at the distraction.
And that's just using the layout of a room for the distraction. It can be as simple as the room is this way, the startle is coming from another direction.
Yeah.
They're distracted looking where they're going so they don't walk into walls.
Yeah.
And the scare can come around. It can be that simple.
I mean, that's, you're getting into definitely like layout.
Yeah.
Which is really, key to like how, because the actors work in the layout. So we're all constrained by whatever layout there is. Right. And it is very effective to like, you have a long hallway and you have this scene like right ahead of you, and you think you're walking right towards it, and then someone just comes at you from the side. So
and that's also a good use of the drop panel and so forth, like we discussed last time. You can hit people when they're, because you can get them. People literally get tunnel vision in tunnels.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they call it tunnel vision for a reason.
Well, a lot of times, like, people are just so uncertain.
Yeah.
Like, you throw them in this uncertain, because when someone's in a haunted house, right, the rules don't apply to normal society.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're so used to living
really?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's amazing. But, like, a lot of times, like, in normal society, you have a certain level of expectations of what will happen.
Right.
When you're in a haunted house, those rules get thrown out, so people are really lost. They have no idea what to do. And that's why what you're saying is design of rooms and layout is so important, because you're telling them, like, you're basically directing all of their attention in one single way. Yeah. You're saying, like, no, look this way, you know? Right.
And not only that, but another way to direct attention is with lighting, and we are going to do a full episode on lighting later.
So that's a whole...
But if you have one bright spot in the room, people naturally gravitate towards the light. Yeah. So they're going to look at it, they're going to go towards it. That's also a good way to direct people how the flow in your haunt works. Mm-hmm. So you can do that, and then put a dark corner either right beside the light or right on the other side of the room. It's right beside the light is really effective if you pull it off.
Yeah, I know. I mean, usually when we're lighting the haunt, the brightest areas are where you walk into the room and where you're supposed to exit it.
Yeah.
Right.
You're here, that's where you want to be, and that's where we want you looking, because whatever's going to hit you is going to come from the shadowy parts around the room.
And you want them walking through that.
Yeah, you don't want them, like, walking through that.
I mean, I think, too, like, you know, conversely, you do the kind of the opposite almost, where you have like a light in the center, like towards something, and you have dark on either side, and like, you know, you're able to see I'm using a lot of hand gestures right now. Like, which translates really well to podcasting. Yes. Like, you, as the people at home can see my hands.
Yes. For me, this is great to watch both of them using all their hand gestures, and you guys can't see it.
It's the Italian haunting podcast. Exactly. We're gesticulating so wildly.
But really, you know, like what you do, you know, we walk in and you see over to the side, you'll see some sort of lighting, and you'll look at that, and then in the shadows, either at the exit or, you know, on the other side, it's very effective to jump out. So exactly what you're talking about. With
And a lot of this actually ties back to like video game level design and so forth. It's like, how do people know instinctively where to go in a video game?
Yeah, that's
they
true.
know, you know, well, it's like if you played Super Mario, you know, right is good.
Yeah.
And so we have these instinctual ideas of where to go. Haunt layout does a lot of that too. Yeah. And when you're doing distract and startle, you can play with that by knowing what the customer is expecting, and then throwing them a curveball based upon that.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that too, because like it is kind of there's a lot of parallels to be drawn there, because it is all about like pathfinding and wayfinding, and saying like, you know, like you kind of have that light direct you, that kind of path direct you, and then doing a curveball at the last minute. I mean, that was that room I was talking about in Salt Lake City that I was working at just in October. It was this kind of windy path. No hand gestures. Windy path.
It's fine.
Yeah, you at least explained it.
Yeah, windy path that's going on, and then you get to the end of it, and so you go straight ahead, but back and forth, and then you get to the end, and then there's that scene, right? And then you think like, whoa, where do I go from there? And then you actually have to turn a corner and go back the way you came on the other side.
Oh,
horseshoe.
So like, it's like a horseshoe, but it was like windy, kind of like a lightning bolt on the other side. And then, of course, they had a cage that you would, like, put people in the cage, you know, and, like, block them in there for a little while and to freak them out. But, like, you know, that was that kind of design where you get to there and then you have this scene of me, like, breaking my back and throwing the thing down. And then you go back the other way, but you don't expect that. You kind of sit there and you look for a while, and then the people would be right around the corner and jump out.
Yeah, right. It's always... It's very interesting how you can do that with layout, mess with people's expectations, with nothing but the layout of your walls and your lighting.
Yeah.
It's super powerful for that. And sometimes it can work against you a little bit. Like I remember one haunt we were in where they had they were trying to simulate the cage, but they used bungee cord.
Oh. So they could like go like pull out.
Yeah, exactly. And you were supposed to, you know, kind of go through it.
They were motioning to push the bars apart.
Go through it. But
did it look good?
No.
This was
bungee cord.
This was but the bungee cord cage. Yeah.
This was at Revelation, and it didn't help that the haunt was lit like totally terribly.
That was one of the worst haunts we've ever been in.
Yeah, I don't say that lightly.
Well, I know y'all go to a lot.
So we do. Yeah. But so it was. But I remember that because it's like I'm not supposed to go that way. Yeah. So my brain's thinking that's where the scare's coming from. Find another way to go. Oh no, we're supposed to. Yeah. It can work against you too. Is the thing is.
You know, what you talking about that actually kind of brings up this interesting point I was just thinking about now too, where it's, it can be done where you can do both a distract and startle from the same person.
Yeah.
Right.
Where like I built this room back in Minneapolis. Long story short, it was a furry fetish room. And so like, and I think I've told you all about that. And so like I would have someone in the bed. There was like a bed. We'd have like these stuffed animals that are mutilated all around them.
Right.
And there was someone who was in bed, but they were like kind of chained to this bed.
Right.
But little do the people know, and this is kind of a common scare really, but like little do the people know, like they're like chained to the bed. They can't get out, and then actually they can get out.
Yeah, the after lunch scare.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
You all have had that before,
Yeah.
you know? Like,
Yeah.
And so like that whole idea where you're like distracting them in a way, you're distracting them. And they're like, oh, okay. And then you set an expectation. And that's a lot of what this is about. It's you set this expectation. You say, okay, this person is trapped on the bed.
Right.
I can walk around this person. And when you get halfway around the bed, then the rules change.
Yeah.
Suddenly the rule isn't that anymore. Now they can go after you.
Right.
When you change that rule, that's exactly when the scare happens.
And that's a good point about the distracting startles. It's about changing that expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The mindset from I can relax because they're over there and they can't get me.
They're chained and
oh crap, they can.
They just want me to go idly around this bed or whatever.
That I have to walk really close to for some reason.
But
it's true because that's a lot of how I kind of see it. Is there's this whole idea of how do you set expectations and how do you break expectations?
Right.
You know, like you set an expectation of what, even like in haunted houses, like where people go, okay, let's say you go through a line of haunted houses. The ones that get me the most are the ones where I go, oh, well, I know what this is all about. And then they flip that on its head.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I know that there's going to be a guy who's scaring me up ahead to the left. And then, boom, there's someone like right below me or something. You're like, whoa, that's what's
where
going on.
Where the flip did you come from?
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite that got me was actually at, this is going back to the Lafitte Fire Department, what they did.
Oh,
I remember we walked into one room, and it was a room inside. It wasn't one of the outside portion. It was an inside room. They had a bush.
Yeah.
In the middle of the room. It wasn't a person disguised as a bush. It was
like
just a bush. It was a legitimate bush in the center of the room. And I walked up
and
and
you
I'm
were
like,
so terrified by it.
And I'm like, what the hell? I mean, is it WTF to me so hard? It's like, what's this bush doing here? Someone comes up behind me. Son of a bitch!
Because they got you because they're like playing with your expectations.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out the bush.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're just like, well, we just wanted you to look at something. We got this bush laying.
Well, we had a plastic bush.
Yeah, we may as well throw that in there.
Yeah, I think the best unintentional distract and startle was actually at Rise for me a couple of years ago. Yeah, not this past year, but the year before. They had, in one of the rooms, it was kitchen scene, and there was a lady talking to you, and she was just stirring something on the pot. But her makeup was so incredible. It was like burnt and boiling, and I'm looking at it, trying to figure it out, and somebody hits me from beside the refrigerator. It's like, I totally wasn't looking for you, but I should have been. And I was so distracted because that is such cool makeup.
There were two that actually struck me. They went through this haunted house in just south of Salt Lake City, actually. And it was called the Strangling Brothers Circus or something. And it was kind of funny. It was a circus. It was entirely circus themed.
I'd be very disappointed if I walked in and it was not circus.
Yeah, they're like a zero circus at all.
I'm just kidding.
No,
but they had two that I really liked, and I told some people about this afterwards. Where number one, you go into this dining room scene. It's a dining room scene, and I'm like kind of looking around. I'm like, all right, where are the people going to be coming from?
Right.
And you can't find anywhere. There's no I'm like, wow, I have no idea. It can't just be a dining room. Like, what's going on? And one of the chairs gets up and starts chasing after me, which I love. I love when they do that kind of creative thing where you're like, oh, now there's a chair that's chasing after me, like an inanimate object.
And that's when you put the marijuana down.
Yeah, I know. You're like, whoa.
All right, it's puff pass.
I didn't think I was doing that.
Yeah.
But then the other one that they did, which was really interesting, is they had a giant bust of a man who was getting electrocuted, and they had an actor who would shuffle you there, and this was kind of this distract thing where they have you shuffled and watching this guy getting electrocuted, but it's giant. It's the size of a room,
right?
Just a bust, just down to the shoulders.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, what's going on here? I'm kind of poking around, looking around, seeing what else is going to happen, and then the head pops off. and then someone is in a costume of the body, just of the
Right.
the arms, and just comes chasing after you. And I was like, whoa, because you have no idea what's going to happen, and you don't expect these like inanimate objects or these pieces of person to come after you.
Yeah.
Right.
And I really enjoyed those as like a haunter myself, because I don't see that very often.
Yeah.
Another way to distract and startle is actually to set up an expectation.
Yeah.
Like with the claustrophobia tunnels, they've stopped doing this, but a few years ago, 13th Gate had four claustrophobia tunnels.
No
Yes.
one expects it.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, they had 4 claustrophobia tunnels. The first 3 were just normal, and you walk through them and you go into a new scene.
Yeah.
The 4th one, you walk through it, and there's a half one that you get pushed into, and there are guts and gore and girls trying to reach for you,
Wow.
and it's just
Like a
a total
hellscape
mind.
I remember. Wait, I saw that one. I think
Yeah.
I went with
You were there for
that?
Yeah, when
That
I went
was-
with you all when
yeah.
you did that. Yeah, I remember that. And you're like, whoa, because
Yeah.
it was only like waist high, right? Wasn't
Right.
it?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
But
then
you
like,
It was like shoulder, like chest high.
yeah, chest high. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so
it was a
maybe my
real
waist,
mind
'cause
flip.
Yeah.
I'm tall.
Yeah.
It
It
was
was
it was a real mind flip, man.
Yeah.
It really got me that year.
Yeah, that was the one that, stuck with me for the next
You're
year.
right though. When you're able to do things over and over and over again, and then
Right.
the last time you twist it, like you say that we're gonna, have a claustrophobia tunnel. You go, okay,
Right.
and then you do the same theme but in a slightly different way, and you're still like, okay, it's still this, and then the last
Yeah.
one, it's just hell on earth, just
Yeah.
insanity. Then it really just throws everyone for a loop.
And
Yeah.
that takes some commitment to it because you have to have a fairly large haunt that you can do the
Yeah.
same thing multiple times and it not be really repetitive.
Yeah, it's
13th Gate is a very, very large haunt. They can do that.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, you can set up expectations. I mean, you can do it with just about anything you can use repeatedly, like vertigo tunnels or even just long hallways. Have a long dead hallway between scenes. Oh, well, nothing happens on hallways.
Yeah, exactly.
And then on the third hallway, just slam them with
exactly.
something.
Yeah.
That's so true. Yeah.
So yeah, you can do
Yeah.
it with just
There's
about
that-
anything.
You can also play with the tropes because we've seen it done twice where chainsaws actually worked.
Yeah.
One was in the Haunt in Monroe, Louisiana. I don't
Yeah, that was
remember the name quite.
Oh
right
yeah,
now.
yeah, I know.
But the guy, he was trying to start the chainsaw and he was sitting there cussing at it.
Oh, so you
And
thought like it was like the guy was actually having problems with it?
He was actually having problems, and so you're watching him sitting there, trying to fuss with it, and somebody comes from the other side
Yeah,
of the room.
there you
The
go.
chainsaw's not the scare.
There you go.
That
That's
was
good.
that was an effective way
Yeah.
to distract you because every haunt has a chainsaw. Okay, almost every haunt has a chainsaw. We avoid them,
Yeah.
but and that was the first time I saw it done effectively, and that's because it wasn't the scare.
Well, yeah, no, then you're doing exactly what you talk about. It's not just a guy chasing you after with a chainsaw.
Which has been
Right.
done a bit.
But it almost like you were saying when you say play with the tropes, that's a good way of putting it because you're like, you walk through and you go, there's the chainsaw. Okay. And the poor guy, like, this is such a bad haunt, they can't even get the chainsaw to work.
Exactly.
And then you're like, whoa, and then it's like, well, then you get shown up,
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, that was clever. I remember that. I wish I could remember the name of that haunt now. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I've never
I may
heard
be
that
able to
before.
look it up. Why don't you retell the second one at Waterloo?
Which one are you?
Where
Second chainsaw.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember what you're talking about. Yeah, with that one, it was very interesting because the guy with the first chainsaw came up behind and scared the back of the group. He just jumped. It was a pretty standard jump from the side of the path, get the back of the group.
Yeah, I saw him coming, so I stood back and let him get
Yeah.
really close to Ellie
He
because
timed it.
I'm that kind of person.
You like push Ellie towards him. Yeah.
No, I just let him get right behind her.
Yeah.
We're terrible
Sorry.
people like that, but yeah. So we saw that. We saw it coming like 1,000 light years away.
Sure.
Yeah.
Totally foreseeable. Like, okay, chainsaw gag. Oh well, it was
Yeah.
a trail. Had to have one.
Yeah,
Legal
exactly.
obligation, whatever. And
You
then.
and,
Then as we're watching that dude,
Yeah.
the other one, we're laughing at Ellie and having our kick. The other dude walks up behind me and Sean.
And gets you then.
Gets them from the other side. And he just basically gets up right behind us and fires it up. I'm like, oh, mother.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
good. Yeah, if you can play with that, you're right. And probably the chainsaw is really. I'm trying to think of something that's more of a trope for haunted houses than chainsaw.
Yeah, that's...
And I'm struggling. I don't think that there's anything.
Chainsaws, drop panels.
Evil
but even,
Visions
like,
was
drop
the one.
panels-
Evil Visions, thank you.
Evil
yeah.
Visions, Monroe.
What is? Oh, that's
Evil
what it's
Vision.
called.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, drop panels are that's true, but that's almost like more of an industry thing. I feel like.
It is.
Right.
Because like we all know what that is, but like people may know instinctively, and if we described it to them, they'd know what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
But chainsaws, you say that word, and they're like, "Yep, haunted houses and chainsaws." That's what
you're absolutely
Everybody
right.
goes
And
together.
I don't
with
really
us,
think that there's more of a trope that exists in a
Yeah.
haunted house than the chainsaw.
So use the chainsaw as a distraction. There's your tip for this episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. You know? Yeah.
But yeah,
I was going to mention too. I had, and maybe you were going to mention this before, but one thing that I was thinking about that's a really effective distract and startle, really, or it's more, I guess, than the startle is different heights or different dynamics in one way.
Right.
So that's when you were talking about me in the rafters. That's part of the reason why I love to go high.
Right.
You know, I've done this in several places because you know you see everyone they're out on our level. There's this like one plane of like our eye level. And then when you start seeing people down really low, and you start seeing people up really high, you are not expecting that. So you set the expectation of everyone's on my eye level.
Yeah.
And then you have someone in the rafters who's dropping their foot down on you. And you're like, what is even going on? I have no idea what
I can't even.
Yeah, I can't even. And so, and I love to play with that because I'll do crab walking and stuff. And then people are like, what? Why is he crab walking? And I love when, that's one of my favorite things is when people get really panicked about something that's not threatening.
Right.
You know, there was like, he's crab walking. Get out. He's crab walking. And you're like,
this chase us like this.
He's crab walking. Get out of here. You know.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is not threatening to you. You know, but they love. You know,
I can move a whopping 1 mile per hour like this.
Yeah, exactly. But that height differential.
Yeah, and Necropolis 13 plays around with that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
They have a lot of fun with the different planes of attack.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things about Distract and Startle in general, though, is a lot of haunters misuse the nice props. They misuse the special effects.
Right.
They try to use them in scare functions when they're really, really awesome distractions.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's what. You know, you're able to like drag something along the ground, or even if you just have a nice prop that you can't even touch, that like is like too nice to really touch.
Yeah.
You know, you can like kind of be looking at it, kind of like play with it, and then like jump out or like have someone jump out from the side. Like you were saying when you got distracted by someone's makeup, it was so good. If you have a really great prop, and then like you can kind of like put it in people's faces, get it like right up in there, so people are like, "Whoa, that's like that looks really real." And then you get someone from the side, you know,
or it's doing its thing, and somebody pops out from underneath it or from below it. You know,
I mean, a good contrast to this are those LCD picture panels.
Yes,
that we see.
Sure.
We went to Waterloo in Illinois.
Yeah.
And they only had one in the entire thing. Because this is like a little charity trail haunt. Yeah. They only had one in the entire thing. And it was at the end of a hallway, so you saw it for a long ways. They made sure you flipping saw it, right?
Yeah.
And you walk to it, and you're like looking at it, and you're watching it change and move and stuff. And you get right up on it, and then someone comes at you from the side.
Oh,
That's perfect use of it.
Exactly.
Compare that to the darkness,
which had like 20.
They had not more than 20. They had them like everywhere, multiple per room.
Well, that's
and you're not even looking at them at that point.
Yeah, no, and that's what it's like exactly what you say. Where not only is Distract and Startle important, but a variety of different ways. Like this is a bedrock foundational concept that you need to get, and you need to be able to be proficient in it to have a good haunt.
Right.
But also you need to learn that it's not distract, startle, distract, because then you're not distracting them anymore.
No.
Right.
Now you're just trying to startle them, but you're using the same formula. And then when you can have different rooms, have different formulas, and different scares built into them, then you have like an effective, like continuous different haunt from place to place, you know?
Right.
And a lot of haunts, I don't think really get the idea of rest periods.
Yeah.
Which is one thing I like about the mortuary.
Okay.
It's because the mortuary, due to the way it's built and the fact that it has stairs, have these natural breaks in it.
Yeah.
And so they get, stairs. They don't scare anywhere near the stairs. Why? Because that's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So you get a mental break.
You get a mental break that gives you time to decompress, and it lets you drop your guard again, and then lets you be distracted.
And that's true. It kind of gets to the fact that, you know, as an actor and working with actors all the time, I see so many people I mean, there's like a bragging right sort of thing, right? Of like in between or after, you know, like if you're on a break in between your chat with someone or after, especially after when everyone's like getting their makeup off, they'll talk about like what the good scares you had and what great scares you had. And if you're in more of a distracting role, if you're like the one who like gets the attention, but then someone else gets the scares, it can feel as an actor like, oh man, like they're so much better, like they did such a better job. But it's hard, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to encourage that, but it naturally kind of comes with the territory. So it's a lot about how do you facilitate, how do you make people feel good about like being in these roles and understanding that if you just have everyone trying to scare everyone all the time,
it's just
the dynamic is too high. It's like if you were listening to a song that had an 9 level volume and like a whole album, then you're like, oh my god, this is too loud. But if you have something that's like 8 to 10 1 and 5 4, then it's like, oh, okay, it's more interesting.
And you've got to allow room for different types of fear and different types of scares. Like last year, we had one girl who would sing and scream at people. Yeah. But her main role was being really, really creepy.
Yeah.
And she was super creepy. And I'll say this, you and Mike and all the others in the hall got some really, really good scares. But you want to know who I heard the most about outside?
Yeah, the creepy girl. Creepy singing girl. Yeah.
Because she was singing and then she screamed like a banshee.
Yeah.
And then scared me, but my God, I'm worried about her type thing. Yeah. It's very unsettling. So you have to open up to different types of scares. And Distract and Startle is super effective, but it works its best when it's peppered
one
of
many ingredients.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think as haunt owners and as other actors need to keep in mind is to thank the people who are playing those support roles and doing a really good job.
Yeah.
Because, it's great to get the screams and everything, but you aren't going to get as good of a reaction if you don't have that person supporting you.
Well, it's a good place for people who are brand new, too.
Yeah.
Because, like, a lot of people come in and they're insecure. They walk in and they're like, I don't know if I can just, like, scream at someone. I don't know if I can do this. And I would always say, like, listen, like, I'd be in a room with someone, we'd be the two of us, and they're like, it's my first time, But I'd say, like, listen, like, all you gotta do, you gotta just do something, and I can be a hurricane, like, behind the scenes, where you, like, just go out here and just kind of, like, jump rope, or just kind of, like, like, skip, or just kind of, like, stand there and stare at someone, and then they're gonna walk in, look at you, and start to walk around you, and while they're walking around you, then I get, like, underneath or something.
Right.
And so it's really good way to introduce people to haunting, because then they start to build up some confidence, and then when you're working with them, you go, that's perfect, you're doing this great, just keep doing what you're doing. And they build up some confidence. Then once they're feeling good, you kind of try and switch it. You say, like, okay, well, this has been fun, how about you try this now? How about maybe all distracting, you try startling? And then you can kind of, like, get someone more into it, and they feel more confident about it too.
And that's a very good point.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Like, for me, one of the most memorable actors at the 13th Gate is the coroner, and near the Jack the Ripper scene. I think we talked about him last week a little bit.
Right.
His job is basically, oh, hello, welcome to the morgue. How are you doing? And his whole point of the whole exercise is to get you to chill the flip out.
Yeah.
It's right at the beginning of the haunt. Yeah. Everyone's super amped, super nervous. He's a bit of a silly character.
Yeah.
It's all about that guard dropping. It's all about making people relax. Oh, it's not going to be that. Look, this guy's super nice. Yes, he's a little creepy and weird, but he's super cool.
He's just inviting us in.
And then you go into the scarier stuff. It's exactly, you need those actors there, and they really don't get the credit they deserve. I agree with you completely.
No, and that's what's so hard too. I mean, coming from an actor perspective is because it's there's a lot of culture of, there are people who are very, like, bragging and a lot of that.
I mean, so many people pee their pants.
Yeah, I know. It's like, how many people, like, this
I had a pooper today.
Yeah, exactly. All of that. And, you get into all of this. And I always find my comfort in what I really like is there are a lot of people who do this. And whenever it's like every night, it's like, oh, tell me how many people, like, screamed. And I'm always like, okay, that's great. But, like, you got one level. You got one thing you can do.
Yeah.
You need to be able to play the whole field. Yeah. For me to be really impressed,
Right. And that's part of what we touched on a little bit last week too, is the creep factor. Yeah. Because a lot of the supporting roles are the more creepy ones.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are going to be remembered more than the person.
Way more memorable.
Yeah.
I mean,
way.
I'm going back to 13th Gate again. I'll never forget that little girl in the red dress. She couldn't have been older than like 8 or 9.
Yeah. Is that Schindler's List or?
No, she only had one line.
Yeah.
She comes up to you in this little pretty dress and goes, shh.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, man, I've been to this haunt up to this point. People are screaming, get out, come here, go away. And I'm ignoring all of them. But a little girl comes up to you and says, shh, you shh.
Yeah, you're like,
the conversation ends.
Like, it's just like, oh, like,
it's off.
You know, and that's, you know, in a way that kind of gets to what you're talking about, truth, and this kind of unexpected, you know, when you see this little girl coming up and like she's gonna be like, come play with us, Danny, or something like that, and then she comes up and just does something like, and you're like, wait, why am I supposed to shoot? Like, why can't I talk? What's going on? What's happening over here? There's like a whole story that builds in your head around this. So you're like, well, what is that about? Why did you say that? Right. And especially when you don't play that up, because that's another thing that people sometimes do is like they scare you and then like, oh, I got that scare, like you know, like just attack. But when you just simply go up and you go shh and then walk away, then they're like, what? Whoa! Like no, like there's more. Yeah. You know, like so. Yeah, that's a good point. You know.
And that's one of the things that was very interesting is because in that case the distraction happened way before the startle.
Right.
Yeah. The distraction kind of stunned us and WTF'd us for a few minutes.
Sits with you,
And then like for 20 seconds later, then the startle comes. You don't have to necessarily have them be one after the other.
That's true.
It can take place as long as you got them distracted long enough, and something that throws them off that hard can definitely work. Mm-hmm.
Right. That kids in general, whenever they're being kids in gruesome scenes, which is something we might have touched on before.
I think
but it's just
at some point,
like if they're giggling and playing
with blocks,
and stuff,
being all casual,
and there's all this murder around them.
It's so much more disturbing than when they're like I just killed them. I love eating people. Then you're like, okay, that's right. But if they're just like,
they're like shoots and ladders.
Yeah, it's like they're just playing like happy-go-lucky and this scene of torture and despair like around them, and then they're like, well, no, like. This is bad, but you don't get it, because this is messing you up,
Yeah.
So, like, are you going to become Batman?
Yeah. Either that or like the Joker. I don't even know.
Either a superhero or supervillain. That's the only thing.
There's one path. So now we have to get shoots and ladders, obviously.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
But it's always fascinating. And when we're getting back on the prop issue, a lot of haunts will spend all of this money on animatronics.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see them like at the Darkness, House of Shock.
There's one in Salt Lake City.
And they'll spend all this money on animatronics, building them and making them and putting them out there, and then not do any startling in conjunction with them.
Yeah.
Right. They rely solely on the prop to be the scare, which is a mistake.
I mean, the prop is cool. The prop is interesting, and as a guy that builds things, I'm like, I'm impressed.
But that's too, and that's why I think it's always so important to have like actors involved in the building of things.
Yeah,
right.
Because actors understand, what kind of works as an actor, and if you can go too heavy in the actors for sure, as we were just talking about before, where you just like scare. But like it's very easy to like have people who just go, this is beautiful. I've created this beautiful thing, and we just need everyone to see it. And actors, whatever, they're secondary because they don't understand this work of art I created. Yeah. And that's great. Like, you created something a lot of times that actually is really cool.
Yeah.
Like you'll see it and you're like, this is actually very well done, and I understand the craftsmanship behind it.
Right.
Average Joe Schmo going through is not going to sit there and go like, wow, I wonder how he did this. What kind of latex did he use to create this?
Yeah.
They're not going to say that. They're going to be like, wow, cool. Okay, what's this? And so like you can use it and it's very effective for them for like a little bit, but you can't just have a haunt based off of these really cool tech gadgets.
No.
I've seen that before.
Which is kind of how we felt The Darkness was for us.
Right.
It had a lot of great tech stuff, really beautiful craftsmanship, but it felt like, at least the night we went, on actors, which made it a little bit. Now, you compare that to The Abyss, which is another attraction by the same people. It's the exact opposite. It's an actor's playground, and nothing but.
And it's interesting too when you have like haunter favorites too, where you're kind of like, a lot of times haunters like, so this one I was talking about in Salt Lake City that I was there, it's called Nightmare on 13th. Mm-hmm. And it's the bigger haunt. It's like a lot of people know it there. And I was chatting with this one woman who in Salt Lake City was like, worked in a lot of haunts before. And I was like, oh, what do you think of this place? She goes, you know, they do too many animatronics. Mm-hmm. It's just animatronics. They like hire like, 6 actors for the whole thing. And, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, and I thought that it was very true. I mean, obviously not 6, but like, like you walk around and you're like, have like, oh, there's the animatronic, this thing, then there's that. And it usually doesn't quite work out. Especially because I was telling you, Jonathan, I know that you would love this. They had like copyrighted characters for like Beetlejuice. Here's Beetlejuice telling you about this, and it's like,
come to my talk at HAuNTcon.
Why did you do that? Probably because of Salt Lake City. Nobody goes there. But like, no offense, Salt Lake Cityans again.
Yeah. There's nothing to do. We just had that part of the
con. It's like just like kind of reference Beetlejuice.
Well, I mean.
Yeah, we've seen that at other places
we've
too.
Seen that at other places too.
Like the place in Mississippi that you went with us.
Yeah.
They gave us
t-shirts that had like copyrighted characters on it. I still have it.
Yeah.
It's a Jason mask. Yeah. And you're like, I mean, I guess you could just say hockey mask.
Yeah, you
could. Be like, what? It's just a hockey mask on a shirt,
Yeah, we know what you're doing.
Yeah, we know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's one of those things. You got to be careful with that, and that's actually the topic of my talk at HAuNTcon. Yeah, we're recording this before HAuNTcon. I don't know when it'll go live, but it is actually the topic of my 1-hour talk at HAuNTcon. That should be interesting.
I know that's your your pet peeve. Is
well, not only for like legal reasons and because I support content creators and all that jazz, but because as a haunt goer, it saps me out of the moment.
Yeah, it does.
Because I know those are movies.
Yeah.
Well, and the other problem is, as a haunt creator and operator, it's a lack of creativity.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I want to see, and like I was talking about, I want to see a chair chase after me because I've never seen that before.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to get a chair chasing after me?
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say right now is where can we find a chair to chase after me? But no, like,
I'll get you a chair.
I want to go into the thing and see a thing that I've never seen before. And then when you're able to do that consistently, like, even just, if you're able to do that a few times at a haunt, I'm like, thank you. Like you really put a lot of thought in this. You had some real good brains behind this. Yeah. And that's some creativity. When you're like, hey, Beetlejuice, he just like burped while he was telling you to go through the haunt. I'm like, okay.
Well, is he Rick and Morty now?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, man, like, okay.
Okay, that Beetlejuice was a gross character, but I think that's more of a Rick thing.
Yeah, I know. And you're like, okay, thanks for... like telling me Beetlejuice, please go away.
It saps out of the moment, and unfortunately, it's not a particularly good distraction either. No. These characters, because people don't let their guard down around it. People see them and they know that it's supposed to be scary.
Yeah.
It's not something that draws their attention strongly enough.
That's funny that you're talking about it does like neither. It's like the like bottom of the barrel where it's like you're like, okay, like because I think what happens, what you're talking about there, it doesn't it distracts you in the bad way because then you start thinking about the movie. You're not in the haunt anymore. Now you're like, oh yeah, I remember that movie, and then that scene happened, and oh, that's kind of like this scene in this movie, and then I remember that part, and then you're like caught off, and then they're like, and you're like, oh, that's right, I'm in a haunted house right now.
No, whoa, I'm not in a movie. I mean, and that's the thing. A lot of haunted houses, I think, try to build themselves as interactive horror movies. Yeah. When that's not what a haunted attraction is. Yeah. And one thing I think that a lot of haunts don't understand or maybe don't pay attention to is that in a lot of ways haunting is like professional wrestling. Yeah. It is scripted, but not fake. There's a difference between those two words.
That's true. Yeah.
It's scripted but not fake, but also the goal of both is to get a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Bad guys go out in professional wrestling, they're getting booed.
Yeah.
The crowd reacts, and the good guys come out, they're getting cheered. The goal is to get that reaction, whatever the reaction might be. If that reaction is a scare, if it's a creep out, if you know what I mean, whatever that reaction is, you want, even if it's a laugh or a smile. Sometimes that's appropriate.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's really what it kind of comes down to with a lot of art, right?
Yeah,
and it's about the engagement that you're able to get. You know, like I'm also a tour guide here in town, and I did 2 tours tonight, and my first tour had a lot of people that were like very engaged. They were laughing. They were having a great time. Right. Like when, you know, they went on a tour of mine recently and we had a good group. Like people were laughing, they were engaged. Second tour, like stone-faced, you know, couldn't do anything. And it's so like, you know, it may be a stretch to call being a tour guide in art, but like, you know, to say like, you know, you're still looking for that for people. And that's when you're creating these ideas for haunts, trying to get the distract and startle, trying to get all these topics down. You're still trying to get a reaction from people because that shows that they're having an experience. Right. And an experience that's memorable in some way.
Right.
Know?
And I mean, that's part of being an actor or a showman of any type.
Yeah, totally.
You know, little known fact, I've been on stage a couple of times for singing.
Oh, there you
go.
Yeah.
You know, if the crowd's into it and clapping along, then it's great. And if it's chirping out there, it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, you know, some people would be like, oh, it's because you need some sort of validation, which I don't think it's that. I don't think that that's it. I think what it is you want to bring people into this experience. You want to give people an experience. And the way that people show that they're having an experience is that they are reacting and audibly in some way, or at least even if at the end they just come after you and go like, hey, that was amazing. You know, that was really good what you did. Then like that's a good way. That's still a reaction, even if, because I know not everyone, you know, I've had groups of people on tours, for example, that they just like afterwards, like they're dead. I'm like, man, you all didn't have any time. And afterwards, everyone's like, that was great. And I'm like, okay, like you could have fooled me, but you know, like in haunts, like it's the same thing too.
Yeah. And that's one of the things is, you know, I love, because I work front of house at our haunt. I love watching people leave and seeing the smiles on their faces.
Oh yeah,
that to me is like, that's why I do this.
Yep,
that's why that more than anything is why I do this.
But that's why we all, you know, that's why everyone does it. Yeah, it's because we all like.
It's not because we're psychopaths.
Well, I mean, it's like
we are.
It's a great outlet for our psychopathy. Psychopathy? I don't even know.
Sure, it's a word.
Psychosis, you know, like it's an outlet where we can take this psychopath inner nature and put it into a publicly acceptable thing.
And they have some good come of it, too.
Yeah, you know, and have people have a good experience, you know, you have people have a thrill for a little while, and then they go and do their thing, you know, live their lives, you know.
Yeah. So, what is the favorite scare that you've done for someone?
That I've done for someone?
Yes. Because you talked about the chair chasing you and that kind of stuff as your favorite been done to you.
Well, in recent memory, for sure. That was the most memorable that I had when I was in Salt Lake City going to a bunch of haunts. I mean, I have a long story, but it's not a distract and startle. Like a thing that, and I think I told you all about like the research we did of the person beforehand and everything. And that was like next level crazy. But you know, like, I think in terms of the favorite that I did. Well, you know, a lot of it, like, actually, when I was working at the mortuary last year, something I really enjoyed. Well, you know what? No, that doesn't even match, because when I was working for y'all and I got in the rafters, and then I just would put my foot down. I took my shoe and my sock off, and then I would just put my foot down and just, like, move it around people. Then that was really fun, because we were like, what the hell? Because they would be like, what's going on? And then they look up, and I was this clown. I'm, like, in the rafters. I'm like, you know, and they'd be like, what the hell? And then I jump down off of the rafters and start jumping after them because, like, I love, and it's kind of a distract and startle.
It is.
You know?
It is.
Yeah, that was actually, I did really enjoy that. But even when I was in the mortuary, I tried to get up really high because I like that, because people usually don't do that. They don't go up high. And so I would, like, climb up on the wall, and then they'd, like, turn a corner and I would be there. And then I would oftentimes make them kind of go under me. And then I would use that to split up groups, because I would drop down between people and then chase them down the hallway.
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, oh, my friend, but no, my friend. And then like the first person in the group will be really scared. They run past you and they think they're past you. You drop down and then you start chasing after them.
Right.
So that's another really fun thing that
Yeah.
So I'd say that. What about yourselves?
Well,
I'm going to turn that around.
You're the guest.
Oh, I'm the guest.
We
that's
talk
true.
about us all the
Yeah,
time.
that's true. You'll probably have like many episodes where you're talking about your favorites. But that was definitely, and that is, kind of a distract and startle too, because you, again, set this expectation. I'm up really high.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're walking under me. And then once you walk under me, now I change the rules. Now I drop down and now I'm just chasing you on your level,
And actually my favorite, one of the scares that I've done is play the victim role.
Oh,
because
really?
I don't get to do that often.
Yeah.
But I do it pretty well.
And that way you're setting up the distract.
Exactly.
And that's just it. I mean, victims, it's always interesting because when you were playing victim, I know when you're talking about, people were talking like, should we like help her?
Yeah, oh, that's good. Yeah.
Well, this year I actually got to play with it some in our haunt because there was a cut through where I could get from my stalker position in the front over to the end of the haunt.
Sure.
And inside of a coffin.
You kind of do both, yeah.
Right. And so I actually had a vet who was an older gentleman, obviously not all functioning.
Veteran or veterinarian?
Veteran.
A veteran. At least he was wearing the hat that said he was a veteran.
I'm going to
I
assumed, but I was like, who knows? Maybe they had like a bunch of dogs with them or something.
That's true. But no, he actually stopped and asked me if I was okay and showed me the way out because he wouldn't leave without getting me out. So,
old school, yeah.
That's some gentlemanly stuff there.
Yeah.
That's what, and that's why it's something that, as an actor, because I have, I'm able to go very high energy that I really try really hard to when I want to be also the guy that when something's working for someone else, when it was in Minneapolis, there was this guy, his name's Tony, huge dude. Like he's like 6'7", and he's huge and hulking, and he is as gay as the day is long, and he can do this super high, like girly voice, and it's like absolutely terrifying when a 6 foot hulking dude is like, "Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Let's play that," and you're like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And,
that's that flipping the expectation.
Exactly, and so.
It's like learning who sang the bread and butter song.
And so whenever I'd work in the room with him, I would always be tempted because I wanted to scare people too. But I realized I'm like, no, I can't compete with that. That's too good. He's got such a good routine. So like, in this furry fetish room I told you, he would be kind of like the tormentor and I would be kind of the victim.
Right.
I would like dress up, I'd be in like a onesie and have stuffing coming out of me.
Yeah.
And have like duct tape over my mouth and be in a chair just be like, and that's all I did for like the whole night. And he would be bouncing all around, but and that's something that you gotta be able to do.
And that goes to playing with your strengths. We talked about that last week, how some actors are big, intimidating people. They can do those physical intimidating roles. Some people are super high energy and can bounce all over the walls. Some people like me are silly stealthy and can move around quietly.
Do you have a quick stealth story?
I used to love, there was I know we got to wrap this up. So
next time, part 2.
But I mean, there was a closet scene. I'm going to probably tell variations of this story on into the future. Mm-hmm. But it was the standard closet scene. Yeah. And the way it worked is I would dress in just a black morph suit. Yeah. Just completely jet black. And it was black walls in it. And the original intent of the guy was I would get in the closet with them and mess with them as they're going through it. Yeah. But people hit that closet and they would move. So what I would do is there was a dead spot at the end of the closet. And I would, if I couldn't get them in the closet, I would just jump over because they didn't know there was an extra hallway on the side of the closet. Yeah. Jump into that hallway and stash it and be waiting for them in the darkness at the end of it. Awesome. Yeah. And so I had a lot of great scares that way. But so stealth and quiet moving is my thing, and that, and also crowd interaction in front of house is where I've found my main niche lately. Right. But but no, these are all some great examples of distract and startle. So anything else you guys want to add? We've got to wrap this episode up.
I think one of the biggest lessons and one of the things that I really wanted to get through that we've gotten through is the importance of the distract. Yeah. And not to feel like if someone's in a distract role, that their role is any less. To really say like the startle is important and the scare is super important. and you can't only have distract, but a lot of times people feel that they're not getting a true scare, but also to emphasize that that's also important.
I mean,
haunting, they work together and they have to
dance,
be together.
Haunting's a team sport, man.
Yep.
It really is. And, not everyone's going to be the Michael Jordan. Somebody's got to be the Scottie Pippen.
Yeah, exactly. Get the assist, yeah.
Get that assist. Well, on that note, everyone, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Crystal.
I'm Kyle.
And this is Haunt Weekly, talking about Distract and Startle. We will see you guys